Greetings all, BWS2K here. We are going to look at the character named Coldheart today, and this is going to be kind of a deep dive like we did for Marrow, except much shorter. There are very few comics that actually feature this character, but she is still one of my favorites. You may remember if if you've been watching some of the videos, the Marvel Heroic videos, I did a scene with her and Speed Freak, and I had it sort of like the shot like the MCU shot, like it was a motion picture rather than reading panels in a comic. And the song that I had it set to was At Last, that song At Last by Etta James. And oh man, it's still one of like my top 3 ever videos that I've ever made, just because of the way it looked in my head. You know what I mean? That was just really fun. So I wanted to talk about Coldheart and give a little background information on her. And I believe I've mentioned this before, but I'll go ahead and mention it now. I have in the past played on a freeform Marvel forum, and part of the sort of application process, like when you show up, you write for a particular character. So I would apply to write for Spider-Man, and then moving forward on the forum, nobody can write a story that includes Spider-Man without me being involved, or at least giving some kind of permission. And so a lot of these characters, Marrow blew my mind because I had never known that she existed, and I don't know how I didn't know that because I was a big X-Men fan. But a lot of the characters that I have played there, and I brought them over onto videos as well, I know because of that. Deathlock was somebody that I had read a little bit of back in the day, and I think the rest I pretty much discovered through that by looking for like lesser known Marvel characters, because A, they probably weren't already claimed, and B, there would be a lot less back reading to do for the characters' stories and powers and things like that. And so that was really kind of like my target, not demographic, but like my subclass of Marvel characters that I was most interested in playing was characters that had never really seen more than a couple issues, or had never really been in any cool stories, and then like taking them and making them, giving them cool stories. I really enjoyed doing that. So, and Coldheart is one of them. So we're going to talk about Coldheart, and we are literally going to go through, to the best of my knowledge, every single panel in comics that she's ever been in. And this will be still a fairly short video, but let's go ahead and get to it. I've got double monitors set up again, but you'll forgive me because it is a little bit of a wonky setup. So here, let me do this. Good so far. So this is the first issue. This is Spider-Man number 49. This is from back in like August, I think. Yeah, August, right on the cover. August of 94. And right on the cover, introducing Coldheart. There's some other things going on in here that we don't care about. We'll kind of skip over, but let's go ahead and get into it. So first page, we have "Beware the Rage of a Desperate Man" as like the conclusion to the ongoing story that we don't care about. And I'm not going to read every single word on every single page, but I do want to read some of it because it is a lot like the cool stories that I like, where there's motifs that pop up in the Cable and Cyclops comic that I covered last time. And I thought it was really cool how they had themes that kind of blended the A story and the B story. And so you kind of have something like that going on here with the characters of Spider-Man, Coldheart, and even not Demogoblin, Hobgoblin, Jason Masondale. So those 3 are in here, and they kind of have their own sort of mirroring motivations or something, however you would want to say that. And you'll see. So our title is Coldheart. In the still of the night, a figure emerges from the darkness. Years have passed since Peter Parker first donned the costume and assumed the guise of Spider-Man. They were years in which the rage kept pushing its way toward the surface as he found himself facing the same criminals over and over again. Classic Spidey, right? We know this. If we know Spidey, we know this, right? The villains have returned again and again to plague his life. Tonight, Spider-Man will make no attempt to contain his rage. He has been pushed too far. Wrapping himself in his rage, he is the Spider. And here's, you got your credits there. So let's see. Okay, next page. Give pity to those criminals who cross his path, for they will find that they receive none from him. He is the Spider. In his blind rage, he sees a man threatening a woman. He's got a little tattoo there, I never noticed. The Spider reacts quickly, efficiently, and with little compassion for either the criminal or his intended victim. He is the Spider, and tonight his rage leads him on a hunt. So this is kind of the uncontrolled Spider-Man, right? Like he's giving in again, as he does in almost every issue. But that's what we're seeing here. But now we switch. We switch and we get to meet our main character, in my opinion, our main character, a classified government facility. And she's beep, boop, boop, beep, boop, putting her little data card in. Merely entering the room, she is breaking half a dozen federal laws, yet she feels no fear. Though it is hard to get emotional about some armor, a piece of machinery, it is the small part of her former life, to which she can still cling. Her emotions were scraped away months ago. Now she finds that life has little to offer her. She turns to this state-of-the-art battle armor for a possible escape from the mind-numbing depression which has been overwhelming her. The armor clings to every part of her body, and instantly she can feel excruciating memories kept at bay. The armor represents comfort to her. Comfort and revenge. And then we have two soldiers who pop in. Freeze, lady, you have no authorization to be in this room. Which, to be fair, it says access granted, so she clearly has some authorization to be here. But anyway. And then she says, oh, Sergeant, I have all the authorization I need. And... whoop. I don't think it'll be me doing the freezing. So that's like a half-page thing. But I want to come back to here. I really enjoy and long for the days when we could have the intro of a character be like a page or maybe 2 pages. If you read like the first, I think it's Daredevil is the one that I read and was amazed by. Like they cover his whole backstory in like 9 panels. Like we're just getting to the moment. Like we want to tell cool stories of this character. Yeah, you know, he was a kid and some radioactive stuff splashed in his eye. He was blind, but he could see things. And let's get to the action. And I like that. I feel like nowadays we just have so much backstory for characters. Not even necessarily new characters too. Like I remember, was it Champions? I was reading Champions. And there was a new character, Snowbird? No, that's not it. She's Inuit. Anyway, the backstory for her is not very much. She just kind of enters and joins the team. And then later on, I'm sure somebody filled in some backstory or something like that. But then, like, what's the backstory to Gambit? Well, here, have 11 million issues and all of the intrigue and stuff. It's like, I guess that's what sells, so you're going to go with it. But, like, for efficiency of story, I don't know. Maybe that's just me griping. But also, I really love this intro because all you see first, you see the hands, and then you see her full silhouette, and then you see just her hands again, and then it's just like piece by piece as she's putting on this armor. And when you contrast it to Spider-Man, and kind of like what the setup is for him, like he's dealing with his past, right? Like I don't want to be like that anymore. I'm going to be changed into the spider. And we have this person who is clearly dealing with something and is using this armor, this uniform to cope with it as well. And I really like how that kind of plays out, how they kind of play off of each other like that. But anyway, so the soldiers come in, tell her to freeze. She says, I don't think it'd be me doing the freezing. And the soldiers say, put the swords away, lady. You have no idea, would you? And then she does like some crazy karate move with swords. Oh, I do, Sergeant. This armor was made for me. They can retire me, take away my clearance, which again, they obviously didn't do because she used the card. Maybe she stole the card. Maybe she stole the card to get in the door. Anyway, they can retire me, take away my clearance, say I'm no longer mentally fit to be a field operative, but the armor is mine to use. Again, Coldheart, so she calls herself Coldheart. Coldheart is going on one last mission. I've got a few superpowered freaks to sanction. So we finally get a good view of her face because it's just been silhouettes and kind of like long shots. She does a cool thing here. So whatever it is you think that's happening here, bear it in mind because it looks like she's putting ice, like doing an ice blast on their hands or something. They obviously, the swords glow, but we're going to get an explanation for how the swords work later, which is a little bit wonky, but you know, if it wasn't wonky, we wouldn't love it, right? And now we switch to sort of our third main character for this issue, which is Hobgoblin. So Manhattan's Upper West Side, a gust of wind slams hard into the body of Hobgoblin, but he is unmoved. For years, he has sought power, real power. Now, after a recent excursion to Russia, it is his. Strength surges through his body. Strength he used to kill the supernatural entity known as the Demogoblin, or Demogoblin. His career revived, Hobgoblin now has the respect, which has eluded him for too long. With the power and respect comes the ability to name his price. Yet, even with wealth of unlimited potential, there is part of his life which feels incomplete. Years ago, Jason Philip Masondale, the man within the goblin costume, was denied a most personal treasure. Masondale is not a man who will be denied anything. He wants that which is his, and he wants it now. So again, we have this sort of like person in the costume, using the costume, moving forward, putting away a past life. Things are changing. Again, it's sort of this momentous movement, moment. And I did read actually last week, 2 weeks ago, Maximum Carnage. It took me maybe a week because I just read it in parts. That was pretty wild stuff. I don't know if you've read it. I don't know if I can recommend it unless you just really like, crazy out there stories where nothing really changes by the end. But Demogoblin was in it, and that was kind of interesting. I'd never seen that character before. And also, I wanted to mention too this idea. Well, I won't go off track right now. We'll keep going. But it's cool to see the three characters kind of given each their own, rather than telling it all from the perspective of Spider-Man, which is his name's on the front of the comic. We're kind of getting a glimpse into each of these three sort of main characters before we get into our proper action. I'm not going to read everything. He breaks in, wants to take his son, and this is like his wife's new partner. But of course, he's obviously not thinking right. I mean, you don't bust into somebody's house dressed like that and be like, "Hey, little kid, come with me," unless you're wanting to inflict more trauma, and maybe that's how this is working. Spider-Man comes along. He's just kind of following the police sirens, or not the sirens, but the following the police cars to the scene of this crime. So he makes it easy. But then also Coldheart is using a police radio and also is able to kind of like pick up that this is happening. And she says, "Both of you in one fell swoop. How convenient for me. How unfortunate for you." So she doesn't seem to differentiate between the two of them. And then we have some other C story, which we don't care about. So they meet together and they kind of go back and forth. And he says, I always want to call him, Hobgoblin. He's like, don't mess with me, Spider-Man. I'm taking care of personal stuff. This isn't about you. He says, I've got power, I've got strength, and now I want my son. Nobody is going to keep me out of his life. And of course, Spidey can't deal with that, but he sees a mirror, which is really kind of cool because it's this reflective moment. Peter Parker's parents returned, only to turn out to be fakes, betrayers, which if you read Maximum Carnage, his parents are alive in that. And that really threw me. That was apparently a thing that happened, but I guess they weren't real. I can't let that concern me. I am Spider-Man, which I wish he would have said, I am the Spider, because that would have been a little bit of a callback, but whatever. It's fine. So he smashes the mirror. So the self-reflective moment is kind of like he doesn't want to reflect. He's about moving forward, right? And so he kind of reaches out and he says, I won't let everything else get to me. I know what I have to do, or I know what I have to. I'm not a doppelganger, not a clone, which was a big deal for him at the time, right? I'm not even Peter Parker anymore. I'm Spider-Man, and it is time to act. Again, I'm Spider, probably. If you're going to call him Spider in the beginning, why wouldn't you call him Spider now? But whatever. But then we get this Frazat, which is just a fantastic word. That should be the name of an SFX on her card. Frazat. Webbing frozen solid. It's going to, and then it does, crack, and he falls down. So you can see Coldheart here has kind of got the edge on him. And you can see his Spidey sense waves, right? And I'm not going to harp on this too much because I do understand when you're writing a story, if you have somebody who can anticipate everything, then you don't really have much of a story. But it is kind of weird to me that she is able to get this off and he doesn't seem to. Maybe he's not able to distinguish between her and Demogoblin, so he's thinking it was Demogoblin. I don't know. But she says, "Stay right where you are, murderer." And he doesn't, of course, know who she is. "Lady, whoever you are making a mistake. I'm the good guy here. And what you just did is giving the bad guy the chance he needs to get away." But of course, she doesn't care. But he says, "Quite true. And while this has been a wonderful little party, it's time for me and my son, or for my son and me, to take our leave." So he grabs his kid anyway, and he flies off through the ceiling. And of course, his wife is begging for him not. And Spider-Man admonishes Coldheart, "Lady, you just blew it big time." "No, Spider-Man," she says. "I'll hunt down Hobgoblin and make him pay for everything that he's done. But for now, for everything you've done to this family, what you did to mine, for everything you do posing as a hero, you and all of your kind must pay with your lives." And her sword blade is near Spider-Man, and he, like, I don't think he's necessarily blocking. It's not a full attack. But he goes to push it out of his face, out of the way, and he screams out and he says, "So cold. My hand only brushed up against her sword, and it feels frozen stiff." Yeah, no, I have other things I want to say, but I'll say it as we get to it. She says, or he says, look, I have no time for this. There's a child's life at stake. So he's like, we got to get to the big bad. And she is not having it. And just look at that dynamic shot, all that wonderful, all to the vanishing point of her toes, that perspective. Don't you talk to me about children. All you superpowered vermin go around battling for your own glory. You have no consideration for the world that exists around you, no thought for the countless innocent lives you put in jeopardy every time you put on that costume of yours. So obviously she has some serious, a serious grudge. The world would be better off without you. I think it's interesting because we saw Spider-Man saving that woman from the mugger, but it was specifically stated that he didn't really care much about either of them. He was just like acting out. So she is correct in her assertion, even though she's taking it a bit too extreme. Certainly she's hitting on a truth. But of course, Spider-Man has to respond. How dare you say that? I spend most of my life putting my life on the line to protect innocence. Right now, I would be protecting a child from Hobgoblin. Oh, yeah, okay, Hobgoblin. I think I called him Demogoblin. Whatever, you know what I'm talking about. If I wasn't dealing with you, the child, think of the child. So he's like trying to get her to like snap out of it. But she just responds, child, like my Joey. Where were you when he needed you? Did you even notice? No, Spider-Man, I'm doing this for the children. But Spider-Man, of course, has no idea what she's talking about and crack kicks her right across the face. And he rushes out the window while she's down and sort of warns her to stay away. And then we have up on the roof, Hobgoblin is talking to his son. And I think, he takes off the mask, which is nice. And that is when the kid says no. And I think from like I don't want to give too much credit to writers, right, for coincidence, but I do like to assume that there's intention behind what they're doing. And I think it's really interesting that kind of like he's crying and he's upset, right? But like the first time we actually see him saying anything big, it's while Jason takes his mask off, or while his mask is off. And he's trying to say, it's me, it's daddy. And he says, no. The kid says, no. It really is you. Get away from me. Leave me alone. So he recognizes who it is, and he doesn't like that. And then, of course, he gets admonished for being a mama's boy. And, we go into this sort of stereotypical, I'm going to teach you some respect or whatever. Spider-Man tackles him, and then they start battling. So he makes the comment, good thing they hadn't gone far. I heard the kids scream and found them. So they had left through the roof. Spider-Man found them when he left out the window. He found them by hearing the scream that the kid had, that the kid had screamed, right? So relevant because it's gonna come up in a minute. So he's saying again, Hobgoblin is saying this is personal. This has nothing to do with you, Spider-Man. And Spider-Man says, wrong again. You guys always think you can do whatever you want to anyone, take anything you want, kill anyone you want, play with people's lives, coming back again and again to haunt them. No more. You all keep pushing and pushing me too far, and I'm not going to take it anymore. I mean, this dialogue could be written for Coldheart, right? Like for everything that we've seen so far, that's what essentially she's saying. And he says, so you're teed off. Who cares? I've been living my entire life in a rage. Get used to it. Get used to it. Get used to it. Spider-Man's really letting loose. I'm so used to it that I can barely remember what it's like to not be in a rage anymore. It's consuming me, Mason Dale. I can't stand what it's doing to me, and neither will you. So I'm supposed to be afraid of this rage? Yeah, be afraid. Be very afraid. Because it's all coming right at you. And there's this cool little like radiant punch thing that he does there. He throws a pumpkin bomb, and he's about to get out of there. And he's up to leave the kid too. And so Spider-Man watches in horror as the explosion sends the young Mason Dale plunging off the rooftop toward certain death. In an instant that seems to last a lifetime, Spider-Man channels all his rage into one final heroic action. So Spidey isn't lost. We just saw him talking about all of the rage and everything. You'd think that he would go after Hobgoblin, but he's focused, and it was all about the kids, right? So he jumps in, saves the kid. He's still Spider-Man. He is a hero. But his spider sense doesn't seem to have gone off. Interesting. So we suddenly see Coldheart here. Now, Coldheart cannot fly, that we've learned. She doesn't have a grappling hook. There was a hole in the roof, and Spidey left out the window. Spider-Man found the two of them because the kid cried. Maybe she just followed the sound of pumpkin bombs and can jump across roof to roof. I don't know. But she says to Spider-Man, don't even think about moving a muscle. Not that you can. It's time for you to pay for all the lives you've ruined. Stand back, child. He won't hurt you or anyone else ever again. And Spider-Man makes the comment, he's thinking, can't move. The sword has me frozen in place. Yeah, but you don't see any ice. Okay? But in the beginning, she had the blue, like, on the soldier's hands, right? So it's like, okay, maybe just touching it is enough. We have established that, but also there's no blue glowy at all. But the kid reaches out and doesn't freeze his own hand. He says, he saved me from, he says, no, he saved me from my father. Leave Spider-Man alone, please. And we just have this reflective look where Coldheart is looking down. And then the story pretty much ends. Minutes later, Coldheart let him live. Touched by the words of an innocent child, she stayed her hand. Now she's gone after the Hobgoblin. They both escaped. Spider-Man knows full well that they'll both eventually come back to plague him anew. They always do. Right now, that doesn't seem to matter. The boy is safe. Anything else he can live with. So a couple things I want to point. Well, I should finish the issue. There's I think a page or two. Yeah, and then it's over. But it's not anything that pertains to Coldheart. So, Coldheart lets him live. But Spider-Man's spider sense doesn't work here. And I feel like, yeah, he's ragged and things are rough. It's a hard sell for me. But it's also a hard sell to be like, she doesn't trigger, she's not Venom. Like, his spidey sense should still work. So I don't know enough, I don't really care enough to go that far to say that she's an exception to the spidey sense. But I think it's nice that the writers were able to kind of just look past that as well. They don't bother trying to explain it like, oh, she's actually a mutant who can't be picked up by psychic or psionic detection or whatever. Like, they just kind of roll with it, and it's there. It's messy, it's clunky, but it works for the story because the story is more important, right? But I do want to point this one piece out. Spider-Man knows full well that they'll both eventually come back to plague him anew. They always do. So when you're doing a deep dive, well, I should say, when I'm doing a sort of deep dive and researching a character, I kind of have this like, what would you say, like a hierarchy or a priority of where you sometimes have things that are depicted in comics and then in like the handbooks, or especially with Marrow, it was like, there was like almost these different eras of her, and how do you reconcile facts about the character when one writer writes them one way and another writer seems to have ignored or forgotten or changed that feature. And so in my mind, roughly, generally speaking, I tend to consider the original writer or writers as the most canon, like they carry the most weight because that's what they intended for that character. And then over time, other writers may come along, but if they say something that contradicts that initial run, I usually tend to favor the initial run. And then the same thing goes for like events and like cameos and stuff are like lesser priority because they often aren't the same writers, aren't the original writers, but they often aren't even necessarily using the character as as who they are, as much as they are just like a fun stand-in or an Easter egg or something like that. With Marrow, we saw this a number of times near the end where it was like they were including her. Yeah, she was there in the background, but nothing that she was doing was really making any kind of a difference in stories. And so it kind of like, it's like, well, she's there, but if you see her in the background and she's wearing a blue uniform, it's not like they've suddenly changed the color of her uniform. They obviously just didn't care enough, right? And so that would carry less weight than all of the other established stuff. So the same goes with Coldheart. All right, but this is her debut. This is Spider-Man number 49. This was back in 94. The next time that we see her in comics, let me make sure I can do this right. Let's see. Civil War. Civil War is the next time we see her in comics. So we're jumping ahead to 2006? So this is over 10 years. And she's just kind of like waiting. So I get the impression that they needed some throwaway characters who were going to die because she's going to die in the initial part of Civil War. And they were just kind of pulling rando characters. But you'll see some familiar faces here. So let's get right into it. Right here in the beginning, this is the very beginning of the Civil War event. This is Civil War number 1. And this is a control room, and you've got the, is it the Young Avengers? Is that what they call themselves? No, what do they call themselves? Warriors, right? Anyway, so this guy says, how many supervillains are we talking here, Speedball? And he lists them. He says 3. No, wait. I think I see Coldheart in the backyard emptying the trash. So that's 4 of them in total. And all 4 are on the FBI most wanted list, right? And so the guy says Cobalt Man, Coldheart, Speed Freak, Nitro. Yep. They all broke out of Rikers 3 months back. And all of them have records as long as your arm. I'm zooming in. Look at this. Coldheart fought Spider-Man a couple of times. And get this, Speed Freak almost took down the Hulk. Now we know Speed Freak. We had that wonderful, wonderful scene with Speed Freak and Coldheart, and they're together in this. But look at that. They were in the breakout event, even though they weren't actually featured in the breakout event. I don't think any of these 4 were. They are just kind of folded into that event. So we can surmise then that Coldheart was in Rikers at the raft in the breakout and was part of the breakout. But also he says that Coldheart fought Spider-Man a couple of times. So sometime between this moment now and really the breakout and issue number 49, the first issue that we just read, Spider-Man tussled with Coldheart at least one more time. Again, if we want to trust the text, if this is what, this is what we're going with, if this is what we're giving credence to, and then things go forward and, that's her taking out the trash there. And it proceeds, if you've read Civil War, she comes back in, she spots them, she comes back in, Speed Freak, I think that's Speed Freak back there because he's grabbing his costume right there, grabbing his helmet. Oh, look at that, I didn't realize, maybe, do you think those are breakout? Do you think they're reading the paper about themselves breaking out? But they've obviously been squatting here for a while. And then they get outside fighting, and she fights Night Thrasher, I think, but Namorita punches her and knocks her out. So, and then she gets kicked back, right? Okay. And that's her laying on the ground. And then we have the whole beginning of Civil War, the inciting incident, right? Nitro blows up. And in this explosion, they're dead. Like, they are presumed to be dead. They are declared dead, and moving forward, they are dead. So, then we see little bits in the years that follow in 2007 and 2008 in some of those official handbook of the Marvel Universe. There's one called Spider-Man Back in Black from 2007, and then there's the A to Z one in 2008. And I can pull those up. Nope, that's not what I wanted. Yeah, handbooks. Why did we switch? Mm-hmm. I don't know why it's not giving me what I'm looking for. Hang on. Okay, I'm not entirely sure why that did that, but it did that, so that's fine. But both entries are the same. I think this one and this one. This is from the Spider-Man Back in Black, or this one actually is from the Spider-Man Back in Black, and this is from the other one. But they say exactly the same thing. I'll zoom in on this one; it's a little bit easier to read. But I'm going to read it with you. And these handbooks would be like, to me, less than the comics in terms of what they contribute, but they often fill in some blanks. So, like, for instance, we learned that her name is Kateri Desaranto, and I think I'm pronouncing that right. And it says, former government agent Kateri Desaranto, codenamed Coldheart, was judged mentally unfit for field duty after her son Joey's death under unspecified circumstances, a loss she blamed on Spider-Man and the Hobgoblin, which we already know that that's not entirely true, because she kind of blamed everyone for that, or at least all the heroes or something. And also we get a little bit more info about she was judged mentally unfit, which okay, forcibly retired, that checks out, and with her clearance revoked, which we covered that like 5 times, her clearance was apparently revoked, she broke into the facility housing her armored costume and stole it, becoming a fugitive. Hearing over police radio that Hobgoblin had taken his ex-wife Karen, was it Karen? I thought it was Brenda. Anyway, and son Jay hostage, and was battling Spider-Man, Coldheart intervened, inadvertently enabling Hobgoblin to flee with the boy. Coldheart sought to kill Spider-Man, but he evaded her and tracked down Hobgoblin. Coldheart caught up with them just as Spider-Man saved Jay from a fatal fall and was positioned to slay the hero when Jay pleaded for Spider-Man's life. Touched by the innocent child's words, Coldheart spared Spider-Man and pursued the Hobgoblin. Subsequently captured, it says pursued the Hobgoblin, which is true, but, this would imply that she caught him or something, but there's nothing there. Subsequently captured, okay. She was imprisoned in the raft until the recent breakout. Hiding out in Stamford with other escapees, she was apparently slain when the New Warriors, that's what they were called, tried to apprehend them, and fellow fugitive Nitro exploded, destroying much of the surrounding neighborhood. So this handbook seems to be suggesting that there is nothing else, like she went out and got the Hobgoblin and at some point was apprehended and put into the raft. But if she's tangled with Spider-Man multiple times, I guess we could include the first time, and then maybe he's the one who caught her and brought her to the raft. So maybe that's 2 times. I don't know, and I'm gonna talk about that a little bit more here shortly. But it gives us a little bit more statistics or accessories, not accessories. What is the word I'm looking for? A little bit more stats. Yeah, which is statistics. Okay, Coldheart wore a bulletproof state-of-the-art armored costume whose full abilities were unspecified. There's just no more information. She wielded twin swords capable of producing an energy that paralyzed with the touch of the blade, or could be projected to freeze objects instantly. She was a highly skilled martial artist and swordsman. Interesting. So when she projects the energy, it freezes objects instead of just paralyzing them. Question mark. Again, it's just kind of one of those things, right? So those are the handouts, or not the handouts, but the handbooks. Then there's this next story, which hopefully it shows up. The holiday special? Yeah, okay. So this is next time. This is a few years later in 2011. And I really like this story. And I can see, as I was prepping for this video, I realized this might actually be some of what inspired that one scene with Speed Freak and her in the church, because I did it without any dialogue, and this one has no dialogue. So there's a bunch of short stories in here, but ours is the first one, Cold-Hearted Christmas. And you can see the writers right here, writer, author, or artist rather, and so on. So I'm going to mispronounce these words, and I apologize. But they are Mohawk words, and there's probably sounds there that I couldn't pronounce. So, Akosarake, Mohawk word for winter. Did you know that Earth is closest to the sun during winter and not summer? Scientists, they think they have an answer for everything. So we see Spider-Man reading a paper that says Coldheart escapes, but she's on the front page of the Daily Bugle. Talking about the scientists, they are right about one thing. I hate winter blues. They hit me like a hammer. Luckily, there is a cure. And now they're going to fight in the alley. Spider-Man has kind of like spotted her. She's obviously having robbed. Looks like there's an armored truck in the background, so maybe she robbed an armored truck, because she's certainly got a bag of cash there. But they're going to fight. Her swords are on her back, not at her hip, by the way. Interesting. So she says action, fighting, being constantly on the move, and not hibernating like some animals. Takwahasan, another Mohawk word. We see that she throws her sword, and it starts to freeze ice on Spider-Man's side, which, okay, for an animal, meaning spider, that word is for animal, meaning spider. Do spiders hibernate? Maybe scientists have a clever theory on that as well. Never mind. I prefer them dead anyway. So we're kind of mirroring that, right? Because she's just fought Spidey. And now he's put a tracer on her, but he flees. He runs away. And then the ice from his wound actually starts to envelop him, and he falls over into sort of a block of ice. She continues. Snow. Now this is a much time, time has transpired here because it's snowing. It looks like it's darker. It's nighttime. Snow. Can't remember the word for snow. Anahiete or something. Without snow, Christmas is not Christmas. I mean, it is, but it's different. This is the time when I like to take care of my family. gifts and the whole shebang, you know? I even learned the entire Jingle Bells in Mohawk. Joey doesn't like it. So Spider-Man, he's using his Spidey sense, I think, to hone in on the Tracer. That's how that works. And so he pulls himself up off the roof and he starts tracking her down. And she's in an apartment with her, presumably her son and her husband, celebrating Christmas. I guess it sounds too strange for him. He doesn't care about his roots. Talking about Joey not appreciating the Mohawk word. And that is all right. Children need to go their own way, just like their parents. And I like this. Well, yeah. I like that Spider-Man calls the police, right? Like, he looks like maybe he reached in and borrowed this person's phone, but he's calling the police instead of like crashing in to the moment and ruining it. But we learn here that she has a Mohawk heritage, which is one of those things where it's like later writers can do whatever they want. I really do like the artwork. I like her costume in this. Regardless what it is, my way was chosen for me by others, which is true, right? Spider-Man kind of determined that. It is the same for anyone who has only one thing in mind: revenge. We are damned souls to be damned. I think that Mohawk Indians do not have an expression for that. And so we see finally that she was actually talking to mannequins, dummies that she had dressed up. Her family is not here. In fact, we know Joey is dead. And we don't know about the husband, but I think we can assume that he is out of the picture. And then this last page we pick up, she's in a jail cell. And she says, I am damned, but there's a typo. I am damned. Does that make me crazy? Crazy because I desperately wish to have my dead child beside me? I know that I need to let him go, but I can't. Just like I cannot let go of my revenge. I will have my revenge against Spider-Man. But she stops and turns and she sees in the window a package. Did I mention that Earth is closest to the sun during winter? The sun cannot warm the Earth, but several rays can find their way to melt a frozen heart. So we see that Spider-Man took the picture that was in her living room right there and brought it to her. And it's such a classy Spider-Man vignette, right? That he's not ruining her life. But also that she is aware that what she's doing is wrong, but she has her own motivations that are kind of taking over, right? And I really like this story, but I realized in retrospect there's no dialogue in it, and I wonder if this is why I liked setting up that scene before. I just really, really like it, and I enjoy the artwork. But I as a person tend to enjoy snow, and I enjoy snow stories too, like visually. So there's just a lot of reasons I liked this one. But I will point out something very important. Does this look like the Raft to you? Does this look like a maximum security prison? Does she seem like somebody who should be in a maximum security prison? Does this look like a window that the Raft would have? I don't know about that. I feel like not. Because Spidey obviously put that in there, and it's snowing outside. So this is 100% a barred window to the outside, which she's not even wearing like a hat and gloves. So like it's probably pretty chilly in her room, but come on, like that's not the Raft. Okay, and then I wanted to take a quick peek. So those are the two main Coldheart stories. There's the handbook entries in between, and then there's, let's see, there's this, which is just a single page from Contests of Champions, which was in 2016. So this is like 5 years afterwards. And it's this character, Night Thrasher, gets pulled out by the Collector, blah, blah, blah. Nobody cares. But look, he's recalling, because he's one of the people who was there with the New Warriors. He's recalling what happened. You absolutely see Coldheart here. And you see Microbe. And Microbe gets, like, toasted in Nitro's explosion. The inference here is that, or the insinuation is that Coldheart also dies with this. Okay? So, if Coldheart died, how was she in the holiday special? And I think, like, if the chronology is that she was in the raft and she broke out of the raft, and somebody says she's had run-ins with Spidey before, and then she dies, and then we read a news story and it's wintertime, and her escape is on the front page of the Daily Bugle, and she gets captured at the end. I think that the holiday, my headcanon, if you will, is that holiday special actually takes place between Spider-Man issue number 49 and Civil War. I think that that holiday special is one of the times that she tangles with Spidey before she ends up at the raft. Do you know what I'm saying? And then talking about people using cameos and things like that, there's actually this too. Let's see. Right here. she was, there was a little event called Standoff or Pleasant Hill or yeah, Standoff, I think. This is from Avengers, all different Avengers number 8, which was also in summer of 2016. There was an event going on where all of the criminals were kept in this town called Pleasant Hill, but they were mind controlled into thinking they were somebody else. And, you know, okay. So she's like in the background of one of the shots, stabbing. I think it's supposed to be Nova. Does that look like her normal sword? I don't think so. I think somebody was just looking for extra characters to sort of put in and round out. And there's another interesting character that I've played actually on the site. So I've done this kind of research for, who used to be called Gypsy Moth, but then she changed her name to Skein, Skein, like a skein of wool or skein. Presumably because Gypsy Moth is perhaps not so politically correct, if you will. It can be an offensive term, right? But in the olden days, nobody was as concerned about that in print. So it's a good move, I think. I have no problems with it. But Gypsy Moth or Skein, is in this issue as well, wearing her old Gypsy Moth costume. So I think that the person who is writing this issue of the comics was kind of just looking for old characters that weren't in comics very much anymore and just throwing them in wherever without really understanding, kind of look at the proportion. The longer I look at it, I mean, it's supposed to be kind of like a walleye view, but like, okay, cool. Well, I don't have any comic books, so I can't criticize it too much. So what can we say about Coldheart? And that's it. Those are all of the times in all of the comics that I could find that Coldheart is ever mentioned, ever depicted, ever, yeah. And there's no dialogue in this at all. So, all right, let's bring it all home. She has a history working with the government. She had special equipment. The swords, in particular, seem to be paralyzing. I mean, this kid's not a block of ice in the last picture we just looked at. He's not a block of ice. So she's obviously stabbing something without turning them into ice. But also, it just glanced by Spider-Man, maybe cut him a little bit, but then the ice grew to completely encapsulate him. But also, in Spider-Man number 49, he touches it and his hand, like, is immobilized. So, and then on the rooftop, he's immobilized. And he's not encased in ice. So, they almost have two features. And this is... I don't do this on purpose, I swear, but it's almost like the Marrow having two hearts started, in my opinion, as like more of a metaphor. And then like later they just said literally she has two hearts. I think the swords are like that. I think initially they had sort of like cryonic paralyzing energy that like over time someone was like, well, her name is Coldheart and she has swords that freeze you, because that's what Spider-Man says initially, right? He says, my hand is like it's frozen solid. And then it was like, yeah, so that must mean ice. And so they gave her ice powers. Okay, sure. That's fine. If that's what you want to do. Here's another good question. In that last picture we were looking at here, I'll put it back up. In this picture right here, like the 5 things that we can say for certain about Coldheart, do you think she would just stab a kid? Even if it is Nova, he's not in costume, so like there's no like this looks like she's stabbing a kid. And do you think that someone whose sole motivation is revenge for the death of her son at the hands of a superhero would do that so easily? No, I don't think so. But whatever. And what else do we know about her? We know that she has a heritage that she values, although we don't see it in the first one. We do see it in the holiday special vignette. And in fact, her name, Kateri Desaranto, is from the handbooks. It's not mentioned in either of the comic books that she's in. So I looked it up, and the name Kateri, if you say it in the Mohawk language, is pronounced like... no, I won't even pronounce it. I won't even try, but it is pronounced differently and it has a meaning. And Deseranto is as well has a meaning, and they aren't necessarily perfectly relevant to the character, but it is a name that it appears to have, and you, if you know, you can correct me in the comments, but it does appear to have, so the first name Kateri does appear to have some connection to Mohawk language, or Native American language anyway, First Peoples. But that was added in a handbook because they needed a name. It wasn't even part of the like actual, and then well, whatever. So that's the sort of dive on Coldheart. We're at the 45-minute mark, and I talked a lot, and so I don't really feel like it was 45 minutes of information. This is usually the part of the video where I say I have plans to do another Marvel Heroic video soon, and that this was sort of a side project, and I wanted to feature Coldheart as one of the characters. But you know, and I know if you've been watching this channel a long time, I say that almost every video, and and then I change my mind by the time I get to making the next video, and it's like, oh, I got to keep promising people that I'm going to do things. So with that part being said, I am actually working on something, and in fact, it has been almost a year, just shy of a year, by like it's been less than 2 weeks. In less than 2 weeks, it will be a year since I last posted a Marvel Heroic video. So I do want to do something soon, and it's just that one of the things I was looking at had to do with Coldheart, and I was like, oh, I should do a video on her because I have all of the references saved from back when I was playing the character on the other site. So I do like Coldheart. I find it wasn't intentional, but I find that a lot of the characters that I like end up being women, and I don't really have a good explanation for that, other than that when you look for lesser known characters, in my experience, I found that a lot of the lesser known characters that got sidelined happen to be women. I don't know if there's a correlation there or if it's just my own personal experience, but I do read a lot of other comics and have a lot of other favorites, but when I specifically go in and then I find them and I'm like, oh, that's a cool thing, or oh, that's a neat trick, or that's an awesome power. And I think with Coldheart, it was just this idea that she has this, she's built around this idea of revenge and wanting to get rid of all the superheroes. And so I feel like she would be an interesting character. I hate the Civil War event. Like, it's not an event. It should never have been an event. But I could see someone like her being involved in that event. That story could make sense. Yeah, anyway. So I wanted to talk about Coldheart. And yeah, I think that's just about all I wanted to say about her. So appreciate you watching. Thanks for sticking with me. If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, observations, you can throw those in the comments section. If you have any idea of videos that you want me to do, or any issues you want me to take a look at and read through, or summarize, you can put that in the comments as well. I really enjoyed doing that for the X-Men with Cable and Cyclops, and we kind of did that here. We kind of read through a comic as well here. I enjoy doing that. It's fun. Read alouds are fun. And otherwise, I will catch you next time. Excelsior.